The Nexus station hung in the void like a jewel, orbiting a neutron star that pulsed with ancient light. Inside its massive central chamber, 200 species gathered for the Millennium Assembly. The chamber was designed to remind everyone of their place in the galactic order. The oldest conquered species sat closest to the center, in seats of polished stone. The newest additions sat near the edges in seats of simple metal. Captain Daewon stood at the entrance, watching the assembled delegates through the transparent barrier. Beside him, Ambassador Hana adjusted her formal robes. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. Behind them, young navigator Taman waited with the rest of the human delegation. "They're staring at us," Taman whispered. "Let them stare," Daewon replied. His voice was steady and cold. The doors opened with a sound like thunder. The council hierarch, a being of crystalline form that shifted colors as it moved, gestured for them to enter. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, in whatever form they took, turned to watch the humans walk forward. Hana noticed it first. At the very edge of the circular chamber, bathed in light from the observation windows, sat a single empty seat. It was carved from lunar rock, gray and ancient. No dust covered it. No delegate sat near it. The space around it seemed deliberately avoided. "The seat of Terra," the hierarch announced. Its voice echoed through translation devices worn by every delegate. "Empty for 20,000 cycles. Today it will be filled or it will be destroyed." Daewon felt his jaw tighten. Hana placed a gentle hand on his arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. They walked to the empty seat and stopped. They did not sit. "People of Earth," the hierarch continued, "you are the last. Every other species in this galaxy has accepted the wisdom of unity under council law. Every world has pledged loyalty. Every government has submitted to galactic order. You alone remain outside our protection." Protection. The word hung in the air like poison. A delegate from the third ring stood. Its form was serpentine, covered in blue scales. "We submitted after 1 year of war. The council's fleet was too powerful. We chose survival over pride." Another delegate, this one from the fifth ring, rose on 6 legs. "My people resisted for 3 generations. Our cities burned. Our children starved. In the end, we learned that submission is not defeat. It is wisdom." One by one, delegates stood to share their stories. Each tale was the same: resistance, suffering, surrender, and then peace under council rule. The message was clear. Fighting was futile. Only fools refused to bend. The hierarch turned its faceted head toward the humans. "We know your history, Captain Daewon. We know of your wars. The hundreds of conflicts your species waged against itself. Brother killing brother. Nations destroying nations. You are a violent, chaotic people. The council offers you something you have never achieved on your own: permanent peace." Hana stepped forward. Her voice cut through the chamber, clear and strong. "Peace we did not choose is called slavery. Order we did not create is called tyranny. You offer us nothing we want." A murmur rippled through the assembled species. Some sounded shocked. Others sounded angry. A few sounded almost impressed. "Your arrogance is noted," the hierarch said. Its color shifted to deep red. "But arrogance without power is merely foolishness. Look around you, Ambassador Hana. 200 species, billions of ships, trillions of soldiers, weapons that can crack planets and extinguish stars. What does Earth have?" Taman felt his heart racing. He knew the answer. Earth had 43 colony worlds, maybe 2,000 military vessels, a population of 30 billion across all systems. Compared to the council's might, they were nothing. But Daewon smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had walked through fire and learned to love the heat. "We have something you will never understand," he said. "We have the knowledge that every chain can be broken. Every empire can fall. Every tyrant can bleed." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in 100 languages. Some called for the humans to be arrested immediately. Others demanded they be given one more chance to reconsider. The hierarch raised a crystalline appendage and the room fell silent again. "You speak of chains," it said slowly, "but you do not understand. That seat behind you was placed there by the first council, 20,000 cycles ago. Do you know why it was never filled?" Hana and Daewon exchanged glances. They had studied council history, but records about the seat were vague, contradictory. Most archives simply called it the Terra seat and said nothing more. "I will tell you," the hierarch continued. "The first council sent an expedition to your world. Your species was primitive then, You had barely discovered electricity. The council expected easy submission. They sent diplomats first, offering friendship and guidance. Your people killed them. They sent a military force to establish order. Your people fought back with weapons so crude they should not have worked. Nuclear fire, chemical poison, biological weapons unleashed without thought of consequence. The council fleet retreated after losing 300 ships to a species that should not have been able to harm them at all. The hierarch's color shifted to something dark and dangerous. The seat was placed here as a reminder, a warning. Earth was marked as a world that could not be reasoned with. A species too violent, too stubborn, too willing to die rather than accept any authority beyond their own. Taman felt a strange pride swell in his chest. His ancestors had done that. With primitive weapons, they had driven back an interstellar empire. The council decided to wait, the hierarch said, to let your species grow, to hope that maturity would bring wisdom, that you would seek us out and ask to join willingly. We waited for 20,000 cycles. And we never came, Hana said softly. No, you expanded on your own, built your own colonies, created your own technologies, and now you stand before us as arrogant as your ancestors were. Daewon walked to the empty seat. He placed his hand on the lunar stone, feeling the coldness of home beneath his palm. This seat represents a truth you've forgotten. There are some things that cannot be conquered. Some spirits that cannot be broken. You thought time would change us, but all time did was give us more weapons. The hierarch's form pulsed with angry red light. Then I give you the same choice given to every species before you. Submit within one solar cycle. Accept council law. Fill this seat as a loyal member of our order, or refuse and face total war. We will come with everything we have. We will burn every human world until nothing remains but ash and memory. The chamber waited for humanity's answer. Hana looked at Daewon. Daewon looked at Taman. The young navigator straightened his spine and nodded once. Daewon turned back to the hierarch. You want our answer now? Here it is. We recognize no authority we did not consent to create. We bow to no power we did not choose to follow. Come with your fleets. Bring your fire. We will meet you the same way our ancestors did. He paused, then added with cold certainty. This seat will remain empty, not because we are unworthy to fill it, but because we refuse to sit in any chamber where species are ranked by the date of their surrender. The hierarch's color went completely black. Then you have chosen extinction. The council will show no mercy. Neither will we, Daewon replied. The human delegation turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind them, the lunar seat sat empty in the light, exactly as it had for 20,000 years, unchanged, untouched, and still waiting for a submission that would never come. Dr. Yuna brushed dust from the ancient metal plate, careful not to damage the inscriptions beneath. She was deep underground on a world called Kepler 442b, a planet humanity had colonized 15 years ago. The colonists had found something strange while digging foundations for a new city, ruins that predated any known civilization. Minho, come look at this, she called to her research partner. Minho climbed down into the excavation pit, his boots crunching on loose stone. He was a combat historian, someone who studied ancient battles and weapons. The military had sent him to help Yuna understand what they were finding. What is it? Writing. But not from any council species I recognize. Yuna pointed at the symbols carved into the metal, and look at the blast patterns on the walls. This wasn't a natural collapse. This place was destroyed in a fight. They had been finding similar sites across the galaxy's edge. Battlefields thousands of years old. Debris from ships that matched no current designs. Weapons that used technology the council claimed had never existed. Each discovery raised more questions. Admiral Jiwan's research vessel had been supporting Yuna's work for 3 months. The admiral was a cautious woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She believed the past held secrets that could help humanity survive the coming war. When Yuna called her down to the dig site, she came immediately. Admiral, I think I found something important, Yuna said, leading her to a sealed chamber they had just opened. Inside were dozens of data cores still powered by some ancient energy source. These are active. The information is still readable. Minho connected a translation device and began extracting files. What they saw made everyone in the chamber go silent. The data cores contained military records from 20,000 years ago. They described an empire that had conquered most of the known galaxy. Species after species had fallen. The records listed their names, their worlds, and the dates they surrendered. The list went on for pages. "This is the Council," Jiwan said quietly. Or what became the Council. They were invaders. The records showed how the Empire operated. They would arrive at a primitive world and offer friendship. If refused, they would demonstrate power, orbital bombardment, biological weapons, planetary shields that could starve entire populations. Most species surrendered within weeks. But then the records showed something unexpected. A small world on the Orion Spur, a planet called Earth. The invasion force approached it with confidence. The planet's inhabitants had just developed nuclear technology. They should have been easy to subdue. The first diplomatic mission was destroyed. Earth's governments, unable to agree on anything else, had somehow united in rejecting the invaders. The Empire sent a military force, 300 advanced warships against a species that had barely reached its own moon. What followed was described in the records with something close to disbelief. The humans fought back with everything they had. They launched nuclear weapons on ballistic trajectories that should not have been able to hit faster than light ships. But the humans calculated firing solutions based on predicted positions, turning space itself into a trap. They weaponized their satellites, ramming them into enemy vessels. They even detonated nuclear devices in their own upper atmosphere, creating electromagnetic pulses that fried alien systems. The Empire's commanders sent reports filled with frustration. The humans did not fight like civilized species. They used tactics that seemed insane. They accepted losses that should have broken any military force. Entire cities were destroyed, but the survivors kept fighting. One report particularly stood out. An alien commander wrote, "They booby-trapped their own dead. They sent false surrender signals to lure our boarding parties into ambushes. They filled cargo vessels with explosives and rammed them into our carriers. These beings do not know when they are defeated." The war lasted 3 generations of human life. The Empire kept sending reinforcements, but logistics across such vast distances proved difficult. Meanwhile, humanity was learning. They captured alien technology and adapted it. They built their own shields, their own faster-than-light drives, their own energy weapons. The final battle took place near Mars. Humanity had fortified their outer solar system with weapons platforms and minefields. The Empire's fleet jumped in, expecting to finally crush the stubborn species. Instead, they found themselves in a kill box. The humans had weaponized the sun itself. They used massive magnetic arrays to channel solar flares, directing superheated plasma at enemy ships. They used gravity weapons that tore vessels apart from the inside. They deployed AI-controlled drones that learned and adapted faster than organic pilots could react. The Empire's fleet broke and retreated. According to the records, the survivors reached the galactic core and reported that Earth could not be conquered at acceptable cost. The High Command made a decision. Earth would be quarantined. The seat would remain empty as a warning to others. Do not disturb the violent species on the rim. They were afraid of us, Minho whispered. Yuna nodded, and they never told anyone. The Council erased this from official history. They probably hoped we would forget too. Admiral Jiwan was already working her communication device. This changes everything. If the Council built its authority on fear and submission, then exposing this truth undermines their entire power structure. But how do we get this information out? Minho asked. We're just a research team on a distant colony. Jiwan smiled grimly. Leave that to me. I have contacts in the military and civilian networks. By tomorrow, every human in the galaxy will know the truth about our past. Yuna looked at the data cores, thinking about the soldiers who had fought and died 20,000 years ago. They had been fighting with primitive weapons against impossible odds, but they had won. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through sheer determination. Do you think we can win again? She asked. Jiwan put a hand on her shoulder. Our ancestors fought the first council with nuclear bombs and chemical weapons. We have fusion reactors, quantum computers, and 300 years of our own space combat experience. Yes, I think we can win. The question is whether the council knows it. The data transmission went out that night. It was broadcast on every human channel, civilian and military. Within hours, it spread to the colonies. Within days, even the most remote human outpost had received it. The message was simple. Humanity had fought the council before and won. The empty seat was not an insult. It was a memorial to ancestors who refused to kneel. It was proof that what the council called inevitable was actually a choice. On Earth, people gathered in public squares to watch the historical footage. They saw recordings of ancient battles, heard the words of commanders who had refused to surrender. They learned that submission was never the only option. On human colonies scattered across space, military recruitment stations were overwhelmed. Young people who had lived their whole lives in peace suddenly understood what might be asked of them. Many were afraid, but more were angry. Angry that the council had lied. Angry that humanity had been threatened. Angry that 200 species thought they could force Earth to bow. Captain Dewan watched the news broadcasts from his ship. He saw the crowds gathering, heard the speeches, read the thousands of messages flooding through military channels. Humanity was unified in a way it had not been for centuries. Ambassador Hana sat in her quarters reviewing diplomatic reports. Other species were watching humanity's response with interest. Some seemed confused. Others seemed afraid. A few seemed quietly hopeful. One message in particular caught her attention. It came from an anonymous source, but the translation was clear. You are not alone in wanting freedom. Some of us remember what we lost when we submitted. If humanity stands, others may find courage to stand with you. Hana saved that message carefully. It might be important later. Taman stood on the observation deck of the human flagship looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council was preparing for war. They would bring overwhelming force, expecting humanity to crumble like every species before them. But they had forgotten what happened last time, or perhaps they thought it would not happen again. Taman smiled. He thought about his ancestors who had faced impossible odds and won. He thought about the empty seat that remained unfilled for 20,000 years. He thought about what Ambassador Hana had said. Peace we did not choose is called slavery. And he thought about what Captain Dewan had promised. Neither will we show mercy. The forgotten wars were remembered now, and this time humanity would be ready. Fleet Admiral Soman stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship, watching the screens as thousands of red dots appeared at the edge of the solar system. The Council Armada had arrived. She had known this moment was coming, but seeing it made her stomach tighten with cold fear. Count, she asked quietly. 11,462 ships, her tactical officer reported. More arriving every minute. Estimated final count 15,000. Engineer Kyung looked up from her station. Our entire fleet is 3,000 ships. Even with the Seoul Defense Network, we're outnumbered 5-1. Salman nodded. She had been preparing for this battle for 3 years, ever since humanity rejected the Council's first diplomatic overtures. Hidden weapons platforms orbited every planet. Asteroid bases concealed railgun batteries. The moon itself had been converted into a fortress. Earth space elevators could launch fighters faster than any carrier ever built. But would it be enough? The Council sent a message. The Hierarch's voice filled the bridge, translated into perfect English. People of Earth, your solar cycle of consideration has ended. We have come with the combined might of 200 species. You cannot win. Surrender now and you will be treated with mercy. Refuse and we will reduce your worlds to dust. Salman opened a channel. Her voice was broadcast across the entire system, heard by every ship and every station. Council fleet. You entered our territory without permission. You threaten our homes. You demand we surrender our freedom. Our answer is the same as it has always been. Come and take it. She cut the transmission and looked at her crew. Activate all defensive systems. Launch all fighters. Every gun, every missile, every last weapon we have. Show them what it costs to threaten Earth. The Seoul Defense Network came online. Weapons platforms that had been hiding in planetary shadows lit up with power. Asteroid bases revealed themselves, their surface opening to expose massive railguns. On Mars, cannon batteries began charging. Jupiter's orbital stations deployed swarms of AI-controlled mines. The Council fleet moved forward in perfect formation. They had done this hundreds of times before. Overwhelming force, careful coordination, inevitable victory. They expected humanity to break when they saw the numbers. Instead, humanity fired first. Railgun projectiles accelerated to near light speed, crossing the distance in seconds. The first Council ships exploded before they could react. More projectiles followed, fired from positions the Council scouts had missed. The perfect formation broke as ships tried to dodge the incoming fire. Pilot Hajun led his fighter squadron into the chaos. His squadron was called the Reapers, and they lived up to their name. Each fighter was small and fast, carrying enough explosives to cripple ships 100 times their size. They flew in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated chaos, making them nearly impossible to target. "Remember your training," Hajun called to his pilots. "Hit the weak points. Engines and weapon systems. Make every shot count." The fighters dove into the Council fleet like sharks into a school of fish. They used the larger ships as cover, dodging between vessels, drawing friendly fire from confused Council gunners. Every few seconds, another explosion lit up the darkness as a fighter found its target, but the Council ships were not helpless. They adapted quickly, deploying their own fighters and tightening their formations. For every Council ship destroyed, humanity lost 10 fighters. The numbers were brutal. On Earth, people watched the battle on their screens. They saw ships burning in the darkness. They heard reports of casualties rising. Some people prayed. Others cried. Many just watched in silent determination, knowing that every soldier up there was fighting for their future. Counselor Era sat in the planetary defense bunker, watching the same screens. She had argued against this war. She had tried to find a diplomatic solution, but her voice had been drowned out by those who refused to compromise. Now she watched good people dying and wondered if there had been another way. "We're losing," she said quietly. Soman heard her through the command channel. "Not yet. Kyung, activate the solar collectors." Engineer Kyung's fingers danced across her controls. Around the sun, massive arrays that had been built in secret over decades began to unfold. They looked like flowers blooming, each petal a mirror miles across. They focused sunlight into concentrated beams, channeling the sun's fury into weapons. "Firing solution calculated," Kyung reported. "Ready on your command." "Fire." The beams lanced out across space. They moved at the speed of light, impossible to dodge. Council ships caught in the beams simply vaporized. Their shields overloaded instantly. Their hulls melted like ice under a blowtorch. In 10 seconds, 200 Council ships ceased to exist. The Council fleet hesitated. This was not supposed to happen. Primitive species did not weaponize stars. They did not fight with such vicious creativity, but the pause cost them. While they hesitated, more human weapons activated. Gravity mines scattered through the asteroid belt engaged, creating localized distortions that tore ships apart from the inside. Biological weapons that had been banned by every civilized species were deployed, eating through hull material faster than repair systems could respond. The Council commander was a veteran of a dozen campaigns. He had seen resistance before, but this was different. These humans fought like they had nothing to lose because they truly did not. They would rather die than surrender, and that made them the most dangerous enemy imaginable. "All ships forward assault," he commanded. "Saturate their defenses with overwhelming fire. Accept the losses. Once we break through the defensive perimeter, we can bombard the planet directly." The Council fleet surged forward. It was a wall of fire and metal, unstoppable by conventional means. Human ships died by the dozen, torn apart by concentrated fire. The defensive platforms were destroyed one by one. Mars's guns fell silent as their power systems were struck. Hajun's squadron was down to 8 fighters from an original 40. He saw the Council ships breaking through, heading toward Earth. "All fighters, suicide run. Engines, target the engines. Make them count." The surviving fighters accelerated to maximum speed. They did not fire their weapons. They became the weapons, ramming into Council ships with the force of kinetic missiles. Each fighter that connected destroyed itself and crippled or destroyed its target. It was a terrible trade, but it bought time. Time for Admiral G1's stealth fleet to arrive. The Council ships did not see them coming. G1's vessels had been hiding beyond the Kuiper Belt, engines cold, systems silent. They had been there for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. They struck from behind, hitting the Council supply lines. Suddenly, the massive Council fleet had a problem. Their forward assault was succeeding, but their rear was compromised. Supply ships carrying fuel and ammunition were exploding. Communications relays were being destroyed. The organized machine of war was starting to fracture. Soman saw her opportunity. "All ships, full assault. Hit them while they're confused." The battered human fleet charged forward. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted. But they had something the Council ships did not: absolute commitment. Every human crew knew that if they failed, Earth would burn. That knowledge made them fearless. The space between Earth and Mars became a graveyard. Ships from both sides burned. Debris filled orbital lanes. The casualty count climbed into the tens of thousands. The battle was no longer about tactics or strategy. It was about who could endure more pain. The Council commander received a message from Admiral G1. Your supply nexus is surrounded. Surrender it or we destroy it. If we destroy it, half your fleet will run out of fuel within 3 days. You will be stranded in enemy territory with no way home. The commander looked at his tactical displays. The human admiral was not bluffing. His fleet was trapped between Earth's vengeful defenders ahead and the human stealth fleet behind. Continuing the assault meant victory, but at what cost? His ships might take Earth, but then they would drift as derelict hulls, starving and powerless. He made the hardest decision of his military career. All ships cease fire. Begin withdrawal. On Earth, people watched in disbelief as the Council fleet began to retreat. They were still pulling back in good order, still dangerous, but they were leaving. The impossible had happened. Humanity had survived. Summon allowed herself one moment of relief before addressing her exhausted crew. Damage reports. Casualty counts. Begin search and rescue for any survivors in the debris field. The numbers came in slowly. 2,300 human ships destroyed. 40,000 soldiers dead. 3 colonies blockaded. Multiple defensive platforms offline. But Earth still stood. The Council had been stopped. Counselor Era emerged from the bunker and looked up at the night sky. She could see the distant flashes of dying ships, the glow of engines departing. They had won, but the cost was terrible. And the war was not over. The Council would return, and next time they would be prepared for humanity's tricks. She thought about the empty seat in the Nexus station. She understood now why it remained empty. It was not because humanity was too primitive to sit there. It was because sitting there meant accepting a system built on submission. Sometimes the only way to remain free was to refuse to sit at the table at all, up in orbit. Hajun's fighter drifted in the darkness. His engines were dead. His oxygen was running low. Ambassador Hana sat in the negotiation chamber aboard a neutral station, 3 months after the battle. Across the table sat Council representatives, their faces showing different emotions. Some looked angry. Others looked tired. All of them looked less certain than before. The terms are simple, the lead Council negotiator said. His species resembled tall birds with 4 eyes. Humanity remains independent. You keep your current 23 star systems, but you expand no further. You make no new colonies. You accept this boundary or we return with 10 times the force. Hana kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt cold rage building. They had fought so hard, lost so many. And now the Council wanted to cage them like animals. So we trade submission for imprisonment. That is not freedom. It is survival, the negotiator replied. Be realistic, Ambassador. You won one battle through surprise and desperation. You cannot win a prolonged war. We have 200 species, billions of ships, countless resources. You have courage, yes, but courage is not enough. Captain Daewon stood by the window looking out at the stars. He had lost friends in the battle. Good people who would never see their homes again. The Council was right about one thing. Humanity could not win a war of attrition. But accepting limits meant accepting the Council's authority to set those limits. No, he said simply. The Council negotiators looked at him. No? You would condemn your species to extinction over pride? Over principle, Daewon corrected. You do not understand, do you? It is not about the systems. It is about the right to choose. The moment we accept any restriction imposed by force, we have surrendered. We just do it slowly instead of all at once. Back in human space, the debate raged. Captain Yunji commanded a colony ship called the Pioneer, carrying 15,000 civilians. Her ship was trapped behind Council blockade lines, cut off from supplies. The people were rationing food. Children were crying. Parents were terrified. She sent daily messages to Earth. Accept the Council terms, please. We are dying here. Our principles will not keep these children alive. Counselor Ara had become the voice of the peace movement. She broadcast speeches across human networks, arguing that survival had to come before pride. We have proven we can resist. We have shown the galaxy that humanity cannot be easily conquered, but now we must be wise. Save the people we can save. Accept the terms and rebuild. Thousands agreed with her. Millions signed petitions demanding the government negotiate peace. Protests filled city streets. People held up pictures of loved ones lost in the battle, asking if their sacrifice had been worth it. Minho, the combat historian, traveled to these protests. He listened to the people and understood their fear. But he also knew what accepting limits meant. If we accept this boundary, he told one group, what happens in 50 years when we need more room? In 100 years, we will have admitted the council has the right to control our growth. Every generation after us will live under that shadow. Dr. Yuna published her research in civilian journals, making sure everyone could read it. The ancient records showed what submission looked like over time. Species that accepted council terms slowly lost their cultures, their languages, their identity. It happened gradually, but it happened. Within a few thousand years, they forgot they had ever been free. Admiral Jiwan met with her officers in secret. Her stealth fleet was intact and hidden. She had intelligence that shocked her. Representatives from 12 council species wanted to meet with her. Privately, away from council monitoring. The meeting took place on a remote station near a dead star. Jiwan arrived with heavy security, expecting a trap. Instead, she found delegates who looked as nervous as she felt. One of them, and being named Minseo from a species that resembled amphibians, spoke first. We should not be here. If the council learns of this meeting, our worlds will be punished. But we had to come. Why? Jiwan asked carefully. Because you fought, another delegate said. You showed something we thought was impossible. Resistance that actually works. We have been council members for thousands of years. We have forgotten what it means to choose our own path. Minseo leaned forward. My people have oral traditions. Stories passed down secretly, generation to generation. We remember when we were free. We remember our own culture before the council homogenized it. We remember that we used to be warriors, artists, dreamers. Now we are just subjects. What do you want from us? Jiwan asked. Hope, Minseo said simply. Your species proves that the council is not inevitable, that their power is not absolute. Some of us want to reclaim what we lost, but we cannot do it alone. The conversation lasted hours. Jiwan learned that dissatisfaction was deeper than humanity had realized. The council maintained order through fear and propaganda, but many species secretly resented their loss of autonomy. They just needed someone to show them that change was possible. When Jiwan returned to human space, she met immediately with Hana and Dewan.
We have allies.
Potential ones, at least. Species that might stand with us if we give them courage. Hana felt pieces clicking together in her mind. A plan forming. Dangerous, audacious, probably insane, but possible. We do not negotiate with the council, she said slowly. We negotiate around them. Dewan understood immediately. We build a coalition. Species that choose freedom together. The council will never allow it, Jiwan warned. Then we do not ask permission, Hana replied. They began working in absolute secrecy. Hana drafted proposals for a different kind of alliance. Not one based on submission, but on voluntary cooperation. Species could join or leave freely. Decisions would be made by consensus. No hierarchy. No forced unity. She sent the proposals to Minseo and the other secret delegates. The response was better than she hoped. 15 species expressed interest. Some were genuinely inspired by humanity's stand. Others saw political opportunity. A few just wanted revenge against the council for old grievances. Meanwhile, the pressure on humanity continued. Captain Yunji's ship was running out of time. The council knew she was trapped and were using her as leverage. They sent messages. Accept our terms and we allow the pioneer to return home. Refuse and those 15,000 lives are on your conscience. Ara's peace movement grew stronger. We cannot sacrifice real people for abstract principles, she argued in a broadcast that reached every human world. Those are children on that ship, families, they did nothing wrong. Bring them home. Hana watched the broadcast and felt the weight of leadership crushing down on her. Ara was right. Every day they delayed, more people suffered. But accepting the council's terms meant sentencing future generations to live under imposed limits. She made a decision that would haunt her. We continue the plan, even if it means the pioneer cannot be saved immediately. Dewan looked at her with respect and sadness. That is a heavy burden to carry. Then I will carry it, Hana said quietly. Because if I do not, I condemn everyone to carry chains forever. On the pioneer, Yunji received word that help was not coming. She gathered her people and told them the truth. Some cursed the government. Others wept. But many surprisingly understood. They had heard about the council's terms. They knew what was at stake. "We can last another month," Yunji told her crew. "Maybe two if we ration harder. Let us pray that whatever plan they are working on succeeds before then." Taemin had been promoted to lieutenant after his service in the battle. He volunteered for a dangerous mission, traveling to council space under false identity to make contact with potential allies. It was espionage, technically an act of war. If caught, he would be executed. He went anyway because someone had to. Over 3 months, Hana's network grew. 20 species now. 30. Representatives meeting in secret, sharing intelligence, building trust. The council noticed increased communication traffic, but had not yet understood what it meant. Minseo became Hana's closest ally among the other species. "What you are building," he told her during one encrypted conversation, "is the most dangerous thing the council has ever faced. Not an enemy they can fight, but an idea they cannot kill." "The idea of choice," Hana agreed. "Yes. And once that idea spreads, no amount of force can stop it." The pieces were in place. Now came the dangerous part. Hana sent a message to the council. "We will meet to discuss terms. Bring your full assembly. We have a proposal." The council agreed, thinking humanity was finally ready to surrender. They did not know that 47 species had been secretly coordinating. They did not know that when the Millennium Assembly next convened, everything would change. Counselor Era watched the preparations and felt deep worry. "You are gambling with everyone's survival," she told Hana privately. "I know," Hana replied. "But if we win, everyone gets to choose their own future. Is that not worth the risk?" Ara had no answer. She hoped Hana was right, but feared the cost if she was wrong. The date was set. In 2 weeks, the Nexus Station would host the most important assembly in galactic history. Humanity would either win freedom for themselves and their allies, or they would provoke a war that would consume everything. Captain Daewon prepared his ship for departure. Admiral Jiwon positioned her fleet strategically. Taemin coordinated final details with allied species. Minyo analyzed historical precedents for what they were attempting. Dr. Yuna prayed to whatever forces might listen that they were making the right choice. The Nexus Station was more crowded than anyone could remember. Every council species had sent representatives. The chamber buzzed with conversation in 100 languages. The hierarch stood at the center, its crystalline form glowing with satisfaction. Humanity had finally requested formal negotiations. Surely this meant surrender was coming. Ambassador Hana walked through the entrance with Captain Daewon at her side. Taemin followed with the human honor guard, their uniforms crisp and their faces solemn. But they were not alone. Behind them came delegates from 15 other species walking together in a unified group. The chamber fell silent. This was not normal. Species did not coordinate like this. They came individually, maintained their place in the hierarchy, followed protocol. "What is the meaning of this?" the hierarch demanded. Hana walked to the empty lunar seat but still did not sit. Instead, she faced the assembled delegates and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. "We come with a proposal. Not terms of surrender, but a vision for a different future." She gestured and Minseo stepped forward. The amphibian delegate's voice was steady despite his fear. "My species has been part of the council for 8,000 years. We submitted after a war we could not win. We were told submission meant peace. But it also meant we lost the right to govern ourselves, to speak our own language freely, to practice our own customs without council approval." Another delegate stood, then another. Each shared similar stories. Cultures slowly erased. Autonomy gradually stripped away. Peace purchased with the price of identity. The hierarch's color shifted to angry red. "This is treason. You were given protection, prosperity, order. In exchange, you accepted council guidance. That was the agreement." "An agreement made under threat of destruction," Hana replied. "That is not consent. That is coercion." Dr. Yuna stepped forward carrying data cores. "I have evidence that the council was founded through conquest, not mutual cooperation. The submission dates you celebrate were actually defeat dates. This entire system was built on force." She transmitted the historical records to every display in the chamber. Delegates watched as ancient battles played out. The truth of their past revealed. The lies they had been told exposed. The chamber erupted. Some delegates shouted in anger at the humans. Others shouted at the council. Some sat in stunned silence, processing what they were learning about their own history. The hierarch raised multiple appendages demanding quiet. Enough! This changes nothing! What was done cannot be undone. The galaxy has had 20,000 years of peace under council rule. Would you destroy that for your precious pride? Hana smiled. It was not a kind smile. Peace built on chains is not peace. It is just slow death. We offer something better. Captain Daewon activated a holographic display. It showed a new political structure. Species joined voluntarily. They could leave whenever they wished. Decisions were made by consensus, not decree. Military forces remained under individual species control. Cultural autonomy was protected. We call it the Free Coalition, Daewon explained. Any species can join. Any species can leave. The only requirement is that you respect the same freedom for others. The hierarch's laughter was like breaking glass. Madness. The galaxy needs structure. Order. Someone must have ultimate authority or there is only chaos. Why? Hana asked simply. Why must someone rule? Can we not cooperate as equals? Because species are different. Some are advanced, some primitive. Some wise, some foolish. The council provides necessary guidance. You provide control, Minseo said, and we are tired of being controlled. The hierarch turned to the assembled delegates. Do not listen to these seditionists. They offer beautiful lies. Freedom sounds appealing, but it means uncertainty, risk, potential conflict. The council offers stability. The council offers stagnation, Dr. Yuna countered. How many species have made significant cultural or technological advances in the last 1,000 years? How much innovation happens when everyone must follow the same rules? Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked thoughtful. Others looked angry. The careful order of the council was cracking. This assembly is concluded, the hierarch declared. Humanity and its co-conspirators will be arrested for sedition. Security forces remove them. Nothing happened. The security forces stood at their post but did not move. Their commander, from a species that resembled armored insects, spoke quietly. We would like to hear more about this free coalition. The hierarch's color went completely black. You dare defy direct orders? We dare to choose, the security commander replied. Then something unprecedented happened. A delegate from the third ring stood up. Her species had submitted 18,000 years ago and had been model council members ever since. I wish to join this free coalition. My government has authorized me to declare independence from council authority. Another delegate stood. Then 5 more. Then 20. Species from every ring, young and old, declaring that they wanted to be free. The hierarch watched the foundation of its power crumbling. He will start a war. Countless will die. Is that what you want? Admiral G1's voice came over the communication system. This is Admiral G1 of the Earth Defense Force. My fleet currently surrounds this station. Not to threaten, but to protect. Any species that chooses freedom today will have our support. Any force that tries to prevent this choice will face consequences. Taemin stood taller, proud of his admiral's timing. Everything was going according to plan, but not everyone was convinced. Many delegates remained seated, loyal to the council. Some spoke against the coalition. You offer chaos. At least the council is predictable. We know what is expected. What you propose is uncertainty. Councillor Era had been watching from the human delegation. She had opposed this plan, but seeing it unfold, she understood its necessity. She stood and spoke. I argued for peace with the council. I thought accepting their terms was wisdom. But I have learned something. There is no peace in captivity, only the illusion of peace. Real peace requires freedom to choose. Her words carried weight because everyone knew she had been the voice of compromise. If even she supported this, perhaps it was worth considering. The hierarch made one last attempt. This will not work. Without central authority, you will fight among yourselves. Species have conflicting interests, different values. You need someone to mediate, to enforce fairness. Hana finally sat in the empty lunar seat. The chamber gasped. You are right that species will have conflicts, but we can resolve them through negotiation among equals, not through imposed authority. Yes, it will be harder. Yes, it will be messier, but it will be ours. She stood again immediately. This seat represents something important. For 20,000 years it has been empty because humanity refused to sit in a hierarchy of submission. But that is not why it remains empty today. She gestured to the entire chamber. Starting now, this seat is empty for a different reason. to remind everyone that freedom is not granted by authority. It is claimed by choice. Any species can choose to stand. Any species can refuse to kneel. This seat represents the right to self-determination. Captain Daewon announced formal dissolution of Council authority over human space. Minseo did the same for his species. One by one, 47 different species declared independence and joined the Free Coalition. The hierarch stood alone at the center of the chamber, watching 200 years of careful control unravel. "You're making a terrible mistake. The galaxy needs order." "The galaxy needs freedom," Hana replied. "Order that is chosen is far stronger than order that is enforced." An emergency vote was called. The delegates who remained loyal to the Council realized they had two choices: fight a war against nearly half their member species, or reform. The war would be catastrophic. Reform at least offered a chance to maintain some influence. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, the Council agreed to restructure. No more hierarchy based on submission dates, no more forced membership. Species could join or leave the new federation freely. Decisions required consensus of participating members. Military forces remained under individual control. Cultural autonomy was protected by charter. It was not everything the coalition wanted, but it was a start. The chamber was redesigned over the following weeks. The rings of submission were removed. Seats were arranged in a circle, all equal. At the center, where the hierarch had stood in lonely power, they placed the lunar seat. Hana was offered that seat as the architect of the new order. She refused again. Let it remain empty, not as insult but as inspiration, to remind everyone that no one stands above anyone else unless we choose to place them there. Captain Yunji's ship, the Pioneer, was released from blockade. She brought her 15,000 civilians home to tears and celebration. The supplies they needed arrived from coalition species, showing that cooperation without coercion was possible. Councillor Ara was elected to represent Earth in the new federation. She who had wanted peace now worked to build it properly, based on choice rather than fear. Minho published a comprehensive history of the transformation, ensuring future generations would remember how freedom was reclaimed. Dr. Yuna continued her research, but now with access to archives that had been sealed for millennia, she uncovered more truth about species that had forgotten their own past.